Hi guys, how is everyone doing today on this lovely Tuesday? So as you guys may know by now, I'm taking over Latina's Instagram, and I'm doing a month-long series of conversations in honor of Hispanic Heritage Month. And so today I have an amazing woman that I just admire so much. She's amazing. She's a poet. She's an author. She's a performer. She's just amazing. So I can't wait to get her on here so we can talk about culture, storytelling, her inspirations, and so much more. Thank you, Ansley. Yes, so I'm just waiting for her to join and then we can get started. Hi, Elizabeth. I wonder if, wait, can you send the request again? I don't know what happened. I clicked accept. Oh, hi.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm good here. So hot in LA.
Oh, I can imagine. It's hot in DC, so I'm imagining the West Coast is even more.
Un calorazo, muchacha.
I'm sorry. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm in LA. You already know. I've been here for 5 years. I like it out here. You've been in DC for a long time though, right?
Yeah, I came in 2016, so it's been 15 years, a long
15
time.
years. Yeah.
Ya tú sabes.
Yeah. And you from where you grew up? You grew up in the Heights?
I grew up in Morningside Heights, so right by Columbia University, between Columbia University and like the Upper West Side.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but predominantly Latino demographic, very Dominican, very Black, very Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
Are you from the Heights?
God. So, huh?
Are you from the Heights?
Yeah. Well, so I grew up in both Dykeman and the Bronx. So yeah, like half and half. So from when I was like 3 to 15, I was in Dykeman. And then from 15 till just about 5 years ago, before I moved to LA, I was in the Bronx.
Wow.
Just like hopping around the Bronx.
Right. Sorry, y'all. See, I'm just going to listen to us Kiki real quick because we're trying to get to know each other.
Yeah, we're catching up, guys, first and foremost.
Right. So. I'm just like so delighted to be here with you and like see your face. So thank you folks for being very patient before we get to any questions, just for us to round ourselves and share space real quick. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. And thank you again for doing this, Elizabeth. Like, I am such a big fan of you, like of all that you do, you've accomplished, just the conversations that you've had in these spaces that are normally for us. You know what I'm saying? You've asserted your dominance, but in the most graceful and humble way. You know what I mean? Definitely. Like just teaching and advocating and spreading that good word, you know what I mean? So I'm like, I have all these books here.
Oh, my heart.
And literally each and every single book speaks to me, like so much. Like, and you speak to us, like a teen mom. I was a teenage mom. I had my daughter when I was 15.
Wow.
So, and I love to cook. But I didn't discover that till later.
Oh my God, she's you. Look at the pineapple.
I know. Oh, the hair.
Casting directors.
Right. When the movie, know, the Netflix original movie. I'm her, guys. No, but yeah, so like the teen mom,
yeah.
Navigating high school relationships and all of that. And then this girl, like, you said that, so I haven't finished reading The Poet X, but she was like, she developed fast, right, at a young age, had like a body, and like she was taught that it was bad, that it was her fault, and like literally my upbringing, like I grew up with so much shame, you know, and then I decided to own it, but like I was objectified so much as a young age. But then it turned to like owning it to then like giving into the stereotype, if that makes sense. Because it's like, if you can't beat them, join them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I just became like that sexy video vixen. You know what I mean? But so this spoke to me like in that way. And then Clap When You Land, like, you know, Afro-Latina in here. My sister is brown. Like my sister Sanja, like my middle sister, she's like brown, you know, and like just she's had so many struggles with that growing up, and like I just remember just like experiencing that through her, you know what I mean? But yeah, I just wanted to tell you how much they all like touched me, you know.
You know, and I really appreciate, I think we need more grassroots book clubs that come from like homegirls, reading books about homegirls, talking to other homegirls. And when I first was put on that you were doing, I think with the Fire on High, I remember being like, oh, this is dope. Like this woman is using her platform to really connect with folks that maybe have a similar thing. So when you reached out for this, it was like, yes, you know, like growing up, there were so few folks who I even knew were big readers, much less reading works by other Dominicans, other Latinas. And so I think it's important that an author can write all that they want, but it's this connection. It's seeing the person we imagined actually reading the book and then saying, yo, I love this, so I want everyone I know to read it. Like, it's like, for me, when we talk about being in community, like this is a huge part of it, that I don't write just to get, oh, that's it, the book is out, and like, no, I'm like, I want my people to feel seen. I want my people to feel like, oh, here's a conversation about shame that feels reflective of what I have. So I also like am just so thankful to you for using your platform this way.
Absolutely. Like, I thought about you immediately when I decided to start a book club. Like, I've always loved to read since a really young age, and I actually write as well. And it's something that I don't really like, you know, actively pursue. It's just like my thing, you know, that I let it out that way. But I want to ask you a few questions, so I'm gonna jump right in. So how did you arrive at the decision that you did not want to conform to the norm, especially like when you started? Because like now I think we're seeing more marginalized voices being amplified, right, in these spaces. But I think when you started, that wasn't really the case. I think, was it 2012 or something like that? And you were like pioneering that. So I'm just like, how did you arrive at the like, fuck it, I'm gonna write whatever I want? Like, how did you arrive at that?
You know, it took me a long time. I've been a poet for as long as I can remember. Since before I knew how to write, I was trying to make songs. I was trying to express myself, right? Like, I come from storytellers, and it's very clear, even as a kid, I was trying to figure out, like, how can I tell a story? And so hip hop came first. I wanted to be a rapper. I was like, I'm gonna be out here. Jay-Z's gonna discover me.
I could kind of see that.
Yeah, I
in your poetry.
Black heavy ciphers with the drug dealers on the corner. Like, for me, that was my first workshop. It was like, I'm home, and I want to figure out a way to talk about home to home. Like, that was always really, really big for me. But it took a little bit of time to discover my voice. And I was actually an English teacher. I taught 8th grade English at a school that was 78% Latinx, 20% Black. They had never had a Latina teacher teaching a core subject. They had never had an Afro-Latina teaching there at all. And here I am with these students who are in 8th grade, but reading at 5th, 6th grade reading levels. And because it was like watching a community and being like, oh, I was also a student in this class. You know, like, I'm the teacher, but I also know what it was like to sit in this room, and to see how my students felt like we just don't have books for us. And it was actually a student who told me, like, there are no books for us. And I went out, I got Sandra Cisneros and Julia Alvarez and Walter Dean Myers and all these authors who I had felt seen by. And this kid finished those books in 2 weeks and was like, okay, what's next? And I realized that I had this huge imposter syndrome because I thought that writing books was for someone else. I can't write a book. I don't know grammar. I don't know syntax. I don't have the rules. Like, I was afraid of it. And it took this kid looking at me for me to be like, yo, but my voice and my kind of story is exactly what she's asking for. And just because I'm so afraid that a white person is going to tell me, no, we won't publish that, or no, that's not good enough, or no, your comma's in the wrong place, I haven't even tried. You know, and so I think that that was when I at least started trying and convinced myself, like, I can teach myself how to write anything. Like, I have a relationship with language. Everything else is just learning patterns.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's learning rules. But once you have that love for language, you can figure all that other stuff out.
Yeah, I love that. Once you have a love for anything, right? It applies to everything in life. This way of going about it. It's crazy that you said imposter syndrome, because that's literally one of the questions that I wanted to ask. Yeah, but it was like further down, so I'm gonna just jump to that one since you're already on talking about it. So yeah, did you ever face the crippling anxieties of imposter syndrome? Because I do all the time still.
No, it's real.
Yeah, it's real. So, like, I guess advice for young women that are in these, trying to, like, stamp their name in these spaces. Like, how do you tell them to navigate imposter syndrome?
I think the first thing is naming that, like, oh, I feel unwelcomed in this space. I feel like a fraud in this space. Because I think that interrogation allows us to think, is it me or is it the space? Is it me or is it the way I was invited? Is it me or is it that they're paying attention to all these other folks in a different way and I don't feel that same welcome? Because sometimes it is us and what we carry into these spaces, and sometimes it's that these spaces weren't built for us. And now all of a sudden they're extending the invitation, but that doesn't make them more welcoming. You're still at a PWI, or you're still in a predominantly white workspace, or you're still in a space that doesn't honor who you are. And so that feels like, I want to bring my full self here and I think I deserve to be here, but I don't know if you know. Right? So we feel like we have to prove something. So I think knowing the chip on your shoulder and that it exists is super important. But the way that I've navigated it is really just doing a lot of internal work about self-worth, right? That when you come from colonized places, when you come from the Caribbean, when you come from, this is what we uphold as beauty, as good, as smart, as worthy, and none of that se parece a ti, you develop these psychological kind of notions about yourself, right? Yeah. So I've had to do a lot of work to have affirmations like, okay, before I go on stage, this is what I say to myself. Before I begin to write, this is what I say to myself. Like, before a book comes out, I write myself a letter, and I write that book a letter. This is why this piece of work, I'm deciding to put it into the world, and this is what I hope it does, right? And that letter is never focused on awards or this, that, and third. It's often like, I hope a young teen mom who never felt the dignity of being depicted in a book in a way that was loving finds this. I hope that a young woman who needs someone to remind her that her voice matters finds this, right? Because then doing that work, it kind of just refocuses me. So when I walk into any room, I know what my agenda is. And it's not to impress so-and-so, and it's not to win this and that and the third. It's I'm going to come, and if I can at the end of the day say, was I honest? Was I honest? Exactly. Then I won. You know what I mean? But it does take, it's taken a lot of work for me to get there. And I'm lying to you, right? Because I still walk into spaces and I'm like, oh, they think I'm just some little hood rat. Oh, they think I'm not. Oh, they think I'm not.
I feel like we're always going to have that. I feel like we
might.
You know, just like that little, like, oh, they think that, okay.
Okay, let me show them, right? Let me show them. But it's a defense mechanism, because for so long that let me show them was what got us here. And now I'm here and I'm like, I don't gotta show them shit. Like, if you want to come through, you'll see it, but I don't have to prove. I don't have to impress you anymore. But it's a relearning. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, it's an unlearning and a relearning. And I love how you said, like, affirmations, because, like, my therapist, we were tackling this like imposter syndrome thing that I had. I'm just like, oh,
Yeah.
it was bad, girl.
Mm-hmm.
I had to write down who I am, but like,
Yeah.
like what am I? Who am I? And like write it down and really see that for myself and really own that, you know what I mean? And just like, just I guess that reconditioning that we're doing, we got to give to ourselves, because if we wait around for the world to do it for us.
No, and no one will do it for us. I realized, and this isn't a question of yours, but talking about imposter syndrome, like I had to think about a lot of the places that I had developed self-worth, and where this idea of impressing other people, what will people say, of imagining that I could be a perfect self that somehow would avoid critique, like that I could do that, came from a lot of my background, came from a lot of the ways that like I was raised to be very, you have to present. No diga la verdad. Like, don't even tell yourself the truth. Like, when I would give myself compliments when I was young, I'd be like, oh, yo estoy muy bonita. They'd be like, no, you let other people compliment you. You don't have to compliment yourself. And so it's all of this kind of practicing that we've done. And now it's an undoing. Like, no, who else should compliment me but me? Who else has to be like, yo, you're the dopest but me? But it was a retraining. You know what I mean?
A retraining.
Yeah.
Practicing a lot of also empathy, compassion with yourself.
Yeah.
You know, like you said, like stating that, okay, I have this is why I feel this way, or is it me or is it the space? And like, so I love that answer. Okay, and then I want to talk about, I feel like you might be, because I did my research, girl. Okay. So I feel like you might be tired of talking about this, but the rat poem.
Dime, what's up?
Ode to Rats.
Yes.
So you dead ass wrote a poem about a rat. Rats.
Yes.
And it is so raw, it's so clever, it's so profound. You found its nobility, but I kind of want you to tell the story like real brief, because I know we don't got hella time, about this poem and like what it actually means. Like, it's dope.
You know, and this is perfect, you know, going from imposter syndrome, that I feel like this poem was my defending the ground that I stand on and where I write from, right? So the rap poem, I was a graduate student. I was studying Master in Fine Arts, specifically in writing, which even that was huge, right? Like I had never considered, I can go to graduate school for writing and this is what it would look like. And I didn't do a lot of research. Like I had been a teacher and I was like, oh, I want to go write. And so I just applied and went. Some people really look for the most prestigious program and this, that, and the third. I was like, what school's going to give me money? And that's where I pulled up, right? And so, but it was amazing to be in this space and be the only person of like pigment, the only person really from a hood, the only person that was writing from the margins in various spaces, right? Intersectionally. Like I had a lot of things that made me very different than my classmates. And I had this professor, very old school. He was the head of the department. And one day he just made a comment. He was always making little comments, you know, but you learned like, okay, but he's hailed and he's esto y lo otro. And he was really smart. He gave good advice sometimes. But he made this comment like, oh, rats aren't good enough creatures for a poem. And, you know, it sounds almost silly to have taken that to heart, but growing up where I grew up, in my particular neighborhood, and knowing the relationship of what certain creatures depict, knowing that I never went camping, so I don't have no idea of no majestic deer. I've never been fishing, so yo no sé nada de.
He was raving about that deer poem. That he was like,
oh, a deer poem. Right. So another student had brought in the deer poem, which is how we got into this conversation of the hierarchies of animals, right? But it's like what you're saying is that the experiences that I have aren't good enough for your kind of poetry if I cannot talk about these kinds of animals. So to me, see, these creatures just be pulling up. You know what I'm saying? They deserve their oaths.
Please don't touch my hair.
But I'm saying, like, it's that. It's like what I know is deserving of a poem, whether or not it matches what you think is a good enough metaphor. You know what I mean? And so to me, that was the poem, that was the story, was this kind of clap back to, I don't even fuck with rats, but I don't agree that that we can push anything to the side of being worthy of a poem. You know what I mean?
It made me look at rats differently.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to hear that. You know, so we have this thing in poetry where people will write an ars poetica, which is almost like their mission statement as an artist. And I think that the rap poem for me is that mission statement. It was where I really had to come to terms with, I'm not going to pander to this workshop or this audience. Like, I'm going to write what I'm going to write. And I trust that my reader exists. I trust that you all would be here, even though it was 5 years before I ever wrote the thing that was published. I had to trust, like, I know I'm not the only one, the only hood shorty who's trying to find work that looks like us. And so that poem, to like dedicate that, was my kind of doubling down. Like, I'm not going to attempt to soften my edges, because it feels better for you to read that kind of poem when you, dear sir, professor, you're not my reader.
Exactly. I'm here for the people that are here for me.
You know, and then there's a lot of books in the world, and like, I don't need everybody to read or like my book. And there's a lot of writers in the world, and like this idea of you know, listen, a lot of people are quote unquote well read, but they're not widely read. And there's a lot of professors I've had who think of themselves well read, but they're only well read within one tradition. And so we just have to be mindful of who we put up on a pedestal to give us opinions about our art.
Exactly. What else? Okay. So any advice for young women that have a passion for writing and they want to make a career out of it? Like, do you suggest that they go and like take academic writing classes, or go a more unconventional route, or and then tell us a little bit about your, I think you might have did that already, but if you didn't, like a little bit about your experience with academia and like writing and all that.
Yeah, I think that when we talk about degrees in writing, or even graduate degrees in writing, this is a new concept. In the last 100 years, maybe in the last 70 years, that's when a creative writing degree came about. So this is new. You do not need this to be a writer. Up until this day, what writers did was read books. They talked to other writers. They wrote a lot. They sent stuff out. They got feedback. They kept going. I don't think that writing is a career about observation. It's an ability to say, this is how I'm seeing the world, and I can figure out how to translate my vision into language that hasn't been seen before. That's what writing is. Yes. There might be a teacher who can help you sharpen that. There might be a teacher who can give you different ways into writing. But if you are a reader, and you practice your craft, you can figure that out, right? We live in a society that's always going to try to create different doors you got to run through in order to call yourself something. But that's not the way that storytelling works. Those of us who come from storytellers who weren't even literate know that that's not the way storytelling works. So there's no one tradition to do this. I think that you really just have to find your people. And sometimes finding your people is like, who are the other 3 or 4 writers I know that really want to work on a memoir? Can I send them pages once a week? Who's my homegirl? My first reader, the first person who reads any of my work, is my best friend from when we were 5. She will tell you to your face, I don't read books. I'm not into this. But that's my reader, because I know if she likes something and she fucks with it, then I did my job. You know, so it's like, whose opinions are we valuing? Who are the artists that you love? Who are your peers who are doing the same thing? Because I think writing is in community. When we look back in time and we say, oh, here are the cohorts. Edwidge Danticat and Julia Alvarez were a cohort, right? And we say W.E. Du Bois, Maggie Walker, Booker T were a cohort. The Harlem Renaissance were a cohort, right? That people find their people, and it's not because of a school. It's not because you got published in the same place. It's because you were writing at the same time and you found each other and you became each other's readers. And sometimes you do that at a school and sometimes you don't. So I don't like these hierarchies of you have to get a degree or any of that. But my publication route was, I live in DC. I wanted to stay in the area because this is where my partner, now husband, was living, and I didn't want to go away. And so, and that was very real for me. Like, I had to make life choices around, like, where do I want to be? So I went where they offered me money, but I had a community of writers in DC. There were poets who were slamming, and that was my community. Those were my readers. Those are my readers now, like those poets. So it's finding your people is my short answer. And you don't need an institution to help you find your people.
Exactly. Exactly. Somebody wanted you to repeat. Somebody said in there they need that definition again.
Which definition? And I'm gonna move you over so I can
I wanted to stop you then because I'm like, I might forget, but I didn't. You were going off on such a good word that I was like, if the person is still in the chat,
maybe, or
no, you were saying, oh, the definition of what storytelling is, or what writing is. I think how you described writing.
I don't know. I know I said that.
You be channeling, girl.
No, because it's silent. I download.
It comes.
No. No, I mean, I think that an MFA, a Master in Fine Arts, as a degree, right? In the way that you could become an engineer or a doctor. I have a terminal degree, which means I can be a professor of creative writing because I reached the highest level that one would need to be a professor of creative writing based off of the education I received. But that program, this idea of getting credentialed, getting actual diploma in writing is new. For 500, 600 years that we've had letters as we know them, no one could stamp and say, now you're a writer. You know what I mean? Like that's a very new concept. You would write and you would submit poems and they would either get published or they wouldn't. You would submit a book and it would get published or wouldn't. So this idea that we've now created other steps you got to go through to consider yourself a real writer doesn't make sense, because writing, that's what it was. Writing is about observation.
Yeah.
That's my definition, y'all. I didn't learn this nowhere, but I just believe that the only thing that makes a writer different is their voice. And the only thing that makes our voices different is that we see the world, we see the exact same thing, but we say, oh, in this moment, I find this metaphor. Oh, in this moment, I find this connection to my childhood. Oh, in this moment, I find this relationship to politics. And our observation is the only thing that makes one voice different from the other.
Yes.
So you always got to just work on your voice. And sometimes that's a teacher. Sometimes that's you by yourself. So I think that was it.
Yeah, that was it.
Okay.
I love everything you said, because everything you're saying applies to many areas of life and many different career paths. And it's really about owning who you are, owning your experiences.
Yeah.
And owning your voice, your unique lens. Like, you have something important to say that's different from me, that's different from your brother, your sister, your friend. Yeah. Everybody is experiencing this life in their own way, through their own lens. So I love what you said. We have like a minute or two, so one or two questions. I'm gonna take one or two questions from somebody for Elizabeth. Please come forward, or forever hold your peace.
Exactly right.
Oh man, this was so lovely. Thank you so much. It was so. Oh, are you touring yet?
So I have done one in-person event, and I'm doing my second one at University of Pittsburgh on Thursday. And I'm doing some virtual events similar to this that are on my website under the events page. But my in-person events are very, very selective, just based off of safety and what makes sense. But I'm in the middle of writing my adult novel, which is
I was gonna ask
project. Okay, and then with the Fire on High, which you mentioned, I'm writing the film for that, and I'm writing the pilot for Clap When You Land. So I have a lot of writing projects on my plate. So my touring has been lessened while I just try to sit tight and write.
Yes,
and I will answer this one. What would Elizabeth say her writing cohort is? I have two homies. Safia Ohilo, who wrote the book Home Is Not a Country, and the January Children, a poet also from DC. Who performs and who I love, my dear sister. So she reads all of my work. and Clint Smith, who wrote the book Word, How the Word is Passed. And he's amazing. And so those are two homies who I used to slam with and perform with, who have grown to see all of my work, and now I'm growing to see all of their work. So we're our first readers for articles, for nonfiction, for memoir, and for novels. Yeah, but it was a very untraditional way. It's not necessarily the people that I did my programs with who became my readers. Like, it was this cohort who were just homies who during the pandemic were like, yo, let's send each other stuff, and now we check in weekly, you know, so you can find your people informally too.
That's amazing. I love that. Oh my God, Elizabeth, thank you so much. This was so insightful. You're so important.
Thank you, Boo. Oh, I appreciate you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for this conversation. I'm so hyped that like we got to have it, and I'm glad we were able to figure out, you know, how to sneak this in. Pero...
And remember, I'm her, so you tell casting directors to I'm gonna submit my tape.
I love it. I love it. I love you.
Okay.
Once we're ready, please.
Definitely. Okay, Mama.
Thank you so much, my love. Be well. Be well.
Be well. Bye, everybody.